Look, I'm not saying the Crinthari are stupid. They're actually quite intelligent. Master strategists, apex predators from a death world that makes Australia look like a petting zoo. And they've got those fancy retractable claws that would make Wolverine jealous. But here's the thing about being the biggest, baddest predator in your corner of the galaxy for the past 10,000 years. You get a little cocky. And when you get cocky, you make assumptions. Bad ones. This is the story of how 3 Crinthari cadets learned that humans are not in fact the soft, squishy prey species they appear to be. Spoiler alert, it involved a whole lot of screaming, some extremely creative cursing, and one very annoyed human named Marcus Chen. Now, Marcus was what humans call average. 5'10", medium build, the kind of guy who'd blend into a crowd at a space station cafeteria. He worked as a maintenance technician on the Joint Species Training Facility Epsilon 7, which was basically a military academy where various alien species learned to play nice and shoot straight. The Galactic Council had this brilliant idea that if everyone trained together, maybe they'd stop blowing each other up over mining rights. Revolutionary thinking, I know. The Crinthari sent their best and brightest to Epsilon 7, which really meant they sent their most arrogant and entitled. See, when you're 7 feet tall, covered in chitinous armor, and can bench press a hover car, you tend to develop what humans call a superiority complex. The 3 cadets in question, Jatthik, Korvan, and Milsera, were the cream of the crop, top of their class, future commanders of the Crinthari Imperial Fleet. They also had the collective common sense of a bag of hammers. But we'll get to that. Marcus first encountered the trio during a routine repair job in the training facility's gravity gym. Some genius had cranked the gravity up to 3 times standard during a Crinthari workout session, and now the emitters were stuck. Marcus was up in the maintenance crawlspace, elbow deep in wiring, muttering the ancient technician's prayer of, "Come on, you stupid piece of junk," when he heard voices below. Look at it. Jathik's voice carried that particular tone of amused contempt that predators reserve for prey animals. The human. So small. Fragile, Korvan added, because apparently stating the obvious was a competitive sport. No natural weapons, no armor. How did such a species even survive long enough to achieve spaceflight? Milsera, who was slightly smarter than her companions, but still not exactly winning prizes for critical thinking, chittered in amusement. I heard they come from a Class 2 world, barely any megafauna, probably never faced a real predator in their entire evolutionary history. Marcus paused in his work. He could correct them. Tell them that Earth was actually reclassified as a Class 4 death world after the Council got a good look at Earth's history. Explain that humans didn't have natural weapons because they invented much better artificial ones. Mention the whole persistence predator thing that made every other species in the galaxy deeply uncomfortable when they thought about it too hard. But you know what? Screw it. He had work to do. The human is ignoring us. Jathik sounded offended. Does it not recognize its betters? Oh, this was going to be one of those days. Marcus finished the repair, switched the gravity back to standard, and climbed down from the crawlspace. The 3 Crinthari cadets looked down at him with what he'd learned to recognize as their version of a smirk. Their mandibles twitched in that way that said they were very pleased with themselves. "Repair's done," Marcus said flatly, gathering his tools. "Try not to break it again." "It speaks." Milsera's tail swished, a sign of amusement among her kind. "Tell me, little human, what is it like being so weak, so vulnerable? Do you not fear walking among true predators?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at his toolbox, then back at her. "Lady, I'm from Detroit. You don't even crack my top 10 list of scary things I've dealt with before lunch. The Crinthari stared at him, unsure if they'd been insulted or if the human was just too stupid to recognize danger. Marcus voted for option 3, too tired for this nonsense, and left. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't, because the universe has a terrible sense of humor, and these three had the combined wisdom of a concussed lemming. Over the next few weeks, the cadets made it their personal mission to prove human inferiority. They'd shoulder-check Marcus in the corridors. They'd take up the entire pathway and refuse to move. They'd make loud comments about human weakness whenever he was in earshot. Standard bullying behavior, really. The kind of stuff that happens when teenagers, regardless of species, have too much testosterone or the alien equivalent and not enough adult supervision. Marcus ignored it. He had a job to do, and that job didn't include giving remedial lessons on why antagonizing the maintenance staff was a bad idea. Besides, humans had learned a long time ago that the best revenge was living well, and also making sure the environmental controls in someone's quarters randomly switched between Arctic and tropical at 3 a.m. Not that Marcus would do such a thing. That would be unprofessional. Though it was funny how the cadets started looking really tired after about a week. Things came to a head during the facility's annual survival training exercise. The program was simple. Mixed species teams would be dropped into a simulated hostile environment and had to make it to the extraction point within 48 hours. No supplies, minimal equipment, just your wits and whatever you could scavenge. It was supposed to teach cooperation between species and build camaraderie. Through what Marcus could only assume was cosmic spite, he ended up on a team with Jathic, Korvan, and Milsera. Because apparently whoever programmed the random team generator had a wicked sense of humor. The four of them stood in the drop ship, gearing up in tense silence. The Crinthari were in their element, checking their harnesses with the confident efficiency of born predators preparing for a hunt. Marcus was checking his emergency beacon and trying to calculate how much his rent was versus how much trouble he'd get in if he just quit right now. Try to keep up, human, Jathic said as the drop door opened over the simulation zone. We would hate for you to get lost and cry for rescue. Yeah, I'll do my best, Marcus said, his tone so dry it could start fires. They dropped into a jungle environment that would make most humans think fondly of their worst camping trips. Hot, humid, filled with simulated hostile fauna that wanted to eat you, and absolutely zero Wi-Fi. The Crinthari immediately took charge, because of course they did, forming up in a standard hunting formation that left Marcus trailing behind like unwanted baggage. The human is slow, Korvan observed after the first hour of hard marching. Perhaps we should leave it behind. Can't, Milsera said, sounding annoyed. Mission parameters require all team members to reach extraction. We are stuck with the weakling. Marcus said nothing, saving his breath. Let them think whatever they wanted. He'd done survival training in the Australian outback, the Amazon, and one memorable weekend in Manitoba during black fly season. He'd be fine. By the second hour, the Crinthari were getting frustrated. Whenever they stopped to rest, which they needed to do frequently, because all that muscle mass and armor was great for fighting but terrible for endurance, Marcus would use the time to gather useful plants, check their heading, and quietly construct basic tools from materials around them. What is it doing? Jathic watched with confused contempt as Marcus wove plant fibers into cord. Making rope, Marcus said, not looking up. Why? We need no such thing. Maybe you don't. Marcus finished the cord and used it to secure several water-retaining vine segments to his belt. I like having options. By the fourth hour, they encountered their first major obstacle. A ravine about 20 meters across with a fast-flowing river at the bottom. The extraction point was on the other side. The Crinthari immediately began scouting for a way around, their solution to every problem being apply more strength and intimidation. Marcus looked at the trees on both sides of the ravine, looked at his newly made rope, and sighed. Or we could just swing across. Swing? Like primitive arboreal creatures? Korvan's mandibles clicked in disgust. We are Crinthari. We do not swing. Okay, have fun with your 6-hour detour. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes constructing a crude but functional rope system between two trees. He tested it, found it sound, and then crossed the ravine in about 30 seconds. On the other side, he waved at the 3 Crinthari who were staring at him with expressions that suggested their worldview had just been mildly inconvenienced. You coming or what? They came, grudgingly, and with significantly less grace than Marcus, because it turns out that a high strength-to-weight ratio doesn't mean much when you're trying to swing across a gap and you weigh as much as a small vehicle. The Crinthari were quiet for a while after that. By hour 6, they were hungry. The Crinthari had been so confident in their ability to hunt that they hadn't paid attention during the briefing on which simulated plants were edible. Marcus, who had actually done the assigned reading like a responsible adult, had been gathering food the entire time. Human, Milsera said, trying to sound authoritative, but mostly sounding hungry. You will share your food. Will I, though? Marcus was sitting on a log, eating something that looked like a purple apple but tasted like chicken. Because about 6 hours ago, I was a weak, useless burden you wanted to leave behind. Now suddenly you want to share resources? The 3 Crinthari exchanged glances. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. We are your team leaders. Jathig drew himself up to his full intimidating height. You will comply. Marcus took another bite of his fruit that tasted like chicken and chewed slowly. No. No. All 3 Crinthari looked genuinely shocked. You dare refuse? Oh, I absolutely dare. See, here's the thing about humans that you might have missed in your xenobiology classes. We're persistence predators. We don't have claws or armor, so we got creative, we got smart, we learned to cooperate. And we really, really don't like bullies. Marcus stood up, and somehow, despite being significantly smaller than the 3 aliens, he suddenly seemed to take up a lot more space. You've spent weeks making my life difficult because you assumed weakness meant helplessness. You've been treating me like prey. But here's what you missed. Humans are the reason almost every other predator species in the galaxy has nightmares. You know why? He stepped closer to Jathik, looking up at the massive alien without a hint of fear. Because we don't just hunt. We persistence hunt. We chase our prey until it literally dies of exhaustion. We're not the fastest or the strongest, but we don't stop. Ever. We tracked mammoths for days across frozen wastelands. We ran down deer until their hearts exploded. We're the monster that keeps coming no matter what you do. The jungle around them had gone very quiet. And the really fun part? Marcus smiled, and there was absolutely nothing prey-like in that expression. We're also the species that domesticated wolves. You know, those apex predators. We looked at them and said, those would make good friends, and then we did it. We didn't hunt them to extinction. We made them love us. That's not weakness. That's being so terrifyingly successful as a predator that we can afford to keep other predators as pets. Milsera's tail had stopped swishing. So here's how this is going to work. Marcus continued, his voice pleasant but with an edge that suggested disagreement would be unwise. We're going to be a team, a real team. That means respect, cooperation, and sharing resources. I'll teach you which plants are edible, how to find water, and how to navigate without getting us all lost. You'll provide muscle when we need it. And those fancy claws of yours will be great for cutting through thick vegetation. Everyone contributes. Everyone survives. Deal? The three Crinthari looked at each other, having a rapid conversation in clicking mandible sounds that Marcus couldn't follow, but could guess the general content of. Finally, Jathik spoke, and his voice had lost most of its arrogant edge. Deal. Great. Marcus tossed them some of the fruit he'd gathered. Welcome to the team. Now let's get to that extraction point. What followed was a masterclass in human survival tactics that the Crinthari would talk about for years afterward. Marcus taught them which plants stored water, how to construct a basic shelter using local materials in under 10 minutes, and how to read the simulated weather patterns to avoid getting caught in a storm. He showed them how to use tools to multiply their effectiveness and explained the concept of working smarter, not harder, which was apparently revolutionary to a species that had solved most problems by hitting them really hard. When they encountered a pack of simulated predators that would have normally sent the Crinthari into a glorious and probably successful but definitely exhausting fight, Marcus suggested they take the high ground and wait for the pack to leave. 30 minutes later, they continued on their way, fully rested while the predators were somewhere else being confused. This is a valid strategy, Korvan admitted grudgingly. We would have fought. Fighting wastes energy, Marcus said, helping Milzera across a particularly slippery stream crossing. Why fight when you can just not? This is very counter to our cultural values, Milzera said. Yeah, well, your cultural values don't mean much if you're dead. Survival first, pride second. By hour 32, something had shifted. The Crinthari had stopped treating Marcus like a burden and started actually listening to his suggestions. When Jathik caught a simulated small game animal, he shared it with the group without being asked. When Marcus's makeshift tool broke, Korvan helped him construct a better one using materials they'd gathered. They were becoming, against all odds and everyone's better judgment, an actual team. Around the campfire that night, about 8 hours from the extraction point, Milzera spoke up. Human Marcus, I must ask, are all humans like you? Marcus poked at the fire with a stick, thinking. Define like me. Resourceful, strategic, able to survive in conditions that should by all logic kill you. Oh. Marcus laughed. Yeah, pretty much. We're from Earth. You know Earth was reclassified as a Class 4 death world, right? The silence from the three Crinthari was deafening. Class 4? Jathik's voice was faint. But you're so small, so soft. Yeah, exactly. Imagine being small and soft on a Class 4 death world. You know what that makes you? Motivated. Marcus grinned. We've got everything on Earth. Diseases that can kill you in hours, animals that can kill you in seconds, plants that can kill you if you touch them, weather that ranges from surface of the sun to frozen wasteland, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes. And we didn't just survive. We thrived. We took over the whole planet. How? Milzera whispered. We learned to adapt, to think, to work together. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most naturally armed, but we're the most stubborn, creative, and cooperative species that ever crawled out of the primordial ooze. Marcus looked at each of them in turn. Your species evolved as apex predators on a harsh world. Mine evolved as middle-tier omnivores on a death world that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Different paths, same result. Survival. Korvan clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. We have been taught that humans are weak, that your species was granted council membership out of pity. Yeah, well, your teachers were idiots. No offense. None taken. They were idiots. The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the distance, a simulated nocturnal hunter screamed into the night. I apologize, Jathic said suddenly, for my behavior these past weeks. It was unworthy of a warrior. We all apologize, Milsera added. We judged your shell without seeing your spirit. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Apology accepted. But you know what you can do to really make it up to me? Anything. Spread the word. To your classmates, your commanders, everyone. Humans aren't weak just because we don't have claws or armor. We're just differently strong. And we make damn good allies if you don't treat us like prey. This we will do, Korvan promised. On my honor. They reached the extraction point ahead of schedule the next morning, the first team to do so. The instructors were surprised. The Krinthari command staff was shocked. The betting pool that Marcus knew for a fact existed among the maintenance crew made him a cool 200 credits. But the real payoff came 2 weeks later when Marcus was doing a routine repair in the barracks wing. He heard voices and recognized them. Jathic, Korvan, and Milsera, talking to a group of younger Krinthari cadets. But humans are prey, one of the young ones was saying. They are weak. That, Jathic said firmly, is what we thought. We were wrong. So wrong, Milsera added. I will tell you what I learned about humans. Marcus paused in his work to listen. Humans come from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They have no natural weapons, so they made better ones. They have no armor, so they made shelters that could withstand anything. They are not fast, so they learned to outlast everything. They are the persistence hunters who never stop, the tool makers who turned their environment into a weapon, and the pack coordinators who made even other predators love them. They are not prey, Korvan said. They are the most successful predator species in the galaxy because they changed the rules of what a predator could be. If you underestimate a human, Jathic concluded, you are a fool. And if you make a human your enemy, you are already dead. But if you make a human your friend, you have an ally who will chase down the stars themselves to help you. Marcus smiled and went back to his repair work. Maybe this joint species training facility thing would work out after all. 3 months later, when the Krinthari Empire formally requested more human military advisors to help train their forces, nobody was surprised. When those 3 cadets graduated top of their class with commendations for innovative tactical thinking and interspecies cooperation, Marcus sent them a message of congratulations. They responded with a gift, a traditional Krinthari hunting knife, inscribed with words in their language that translated roughly to, for the predator who taught us to truly hunt. Marcus kept it on his wall, right next to his toolbox. Because at the end of the day, that's what humans are. Teachers, thinkers, survivors, and the scariest kind of predator. The kind that helps other predators be better at what they do. And somewhere in the galaxy, 3 Krinthari warriors were teaching the next generation a very important lesson. Never underestimate the species that turned a death world into a home, wolves into dogs, and survival into an art form. Humans, after all, don't just survive. They excel. They adapt. They overcome. And they never, ever quit. The end.